the recent 10th World Water Forum in Bali, the United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, has played several key roles aligned with its mission to promote sustainable development and address water-related challenges. In policy advocacy aspect, UNDP advocates for policies and strategies which promote sustainable water management, equitable access to clean water and sanitation, and resilience to water-related challenges such as droughts and floods. UNDP was also engaged in policy discussions and promoted dialogue among stakeholders to advance water-related goals. In partnerships and collaboration aspect, UNDP fostered partnerships among various stakeholders, including governments, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and private sector, to mobilize resources and expertise for addressing water-related challenges. At the forum, UNDP facilitated networking opportunities and collaborative initiatives aimed at finding innovative solutions to water issues. In innovation and technology, UNDP has also promoted the adoption of innovative technologies and practices for efficient water use, pollution prevention, and sustainable water management. As well, UNDP showcased innovative solutions and best practices at the forum. The body also facilitated discussions on the role of technology in addressing water challenges. Further, UNDP contributed to monitoring progress towards achieving water-related sustainable development goals and evaluated the effectiveness of interventions and policies in addressing water challenges. In addition, UNDP shared insights and experiences on monitoring mechanisms and indicators for measuring water-related progress. Overall, UNDP's main role at the 10th World Water Forum in Bali contributed to discussions, initiatives, and partnerships aimed at advancing global efforts towards achieving water security, sustainability, and resilience.
Hello and welcome to Special Dialogue on TVRI World with me, Siska Becker. The United Nations Development Programme, or UNDP, alongside with its country office here in Indonesia, is playing a pivotal role in promoting sustainable water solutions right here at the 10th World Water Forum in Bali. To learn more about UNDP's commitment to ensuring equitable and sustainable access water in Indonesia, and also its role right here at the forum, I will now converse with my very special guest, UNDP Global Water Senior Technical Advisor, Dr. Mary Matthews. Dr. Mary, how do you do?
Fine, thank you. And thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I first want to say thank you so much for squeezing us in your schedule here at the forum. I can only imagine you must have a packed schedule here.
It's busy, but it's worthwhile, because if we're only talking to ourselves, we're not talking to everybody else, and we need to be talking to everybody about water.
So we truly appreciate your time here.
Absolutely.
But before we talk about UNDP's projects in Indonesia, may I first ask, how are you enjoying your time here at the 10th World Water Forum in Bali?
I absolutely am loving it. I have traveled all over the world and as part of my job, and I get to go a lot of different places.
Okay.
The landscapes, the greenery, the traditions here are absolutely spectacular. and they're only really topped by the warmth and the kindness and the generosity of the people. And it's just very heartwarming to be here, and it's great to be here at the World Water Forum, where I'm getting to see a lot of wonderful things, as well as to see colleagues that I've met at other venues all coming together and continuing to work forward on the water action agenda.
All right, that's very encouraging to hear, to know that you've enjoyed your time here. Now, you've attended one of the main attraction of the event, the gala dinner. You just told me about that, and I'm sure a lot of other events like the opening ceremony and a lot of scheduled meetings with different countries. But what has been the best highlight for you personally attending the forum so far?
Oh my goodness. Wow, the best highlight attending the forum so far, I think it's actually having an opportunity to talk with my colleagues from across the wider water community, not just within the UN system, who we meet with regularly, but beyond that, so that we really are having an opportunity to share the work we're doing, to share the messaging that we're all building and working on together, and to feel that strong sense of commitment to really making water mainstream and how we manage water mainstream from compared to the past. We haven't done that so well in the past, and we're really moving that forward now, and seeing that traction happening and moving forward and moving into the future World Water Forums as well as the UN events. It's just, that to me is so exciting to see happening.
All right, it'll be interesting to learn more about the progression of the mission from UNDP Water Program, but maybe you can tell us for now in 2024, what are the primary goals and objectives of UNDP Water Program, and how would they align with the mission here at the World Water Forum?
Right. Our main goals within our water forum is to really, with UNDP, because UNDP coordinates across all the ministries. We work with everyone, and when it comes to water, water impacts everyone. And so really building up that structure and that governance that's integrated. It's not just a Minister of Agriculture issue that deals with water, a Ministry of Ecology. It really is the Ministry of Urban Development or the Ministry of Housing, as well as, of course, ministries of industry, of finance, and so forth, all coming together and working together to build the governance structures that are needed, that have to give everyone, including NGOs and the private sector, a voice at the table, so that we then are able to create enabling environments for more investment that come in and can support actual, real, on-the-ground change, which is what we really need to see now. We've talked enough, it's now time to have that change happen.
All right, so a lot of stakeholders are involved in the ongoing mission, both for UNDP Water Program and also at the WWF. But I want to know more actually, because we understand that you also have another role as one of the board members at the UN Water, and you are also UNDP's Global Water Senior Technical Advisor. So we understand there's also UN's Water Conference.
Right.
Now, how is it different from the World Water Forum?
That's a very, very good question. The UN, prior to 2023, when we had the UN 2023 Water Conference, which was an official UN conference with official delegations, member state representatives, and so forth. The last time prior to 2023 we had that, I was 12 years old. It was 1977. And honestly, I had an interesting experience, which was I was asked just before that conference by the Secretary General's office, why is it taking so long? Is it because water is not important? And I said, actually, no. It is incredibly important, and it's incredibly challenging and difficult. And that's why it's taken us so long. The World Water Forum, which is somewhat different from, as you rightly noted, is different from the UN water conferences, has been more inclusive. It's private sector, it's NGOs, both local and global NGOs. It is also very much focused not only on the inclusivity, sorry,
Okay.
inclusivity. It also has a much stronger private sector level to it.
Okay.
And so the first water conference, the first World Water Forum was 1997.
Yes.
So it was actually 20 years even, there was that gap of 20
Yeah.
years. I think one of the big things we're seeing now is that now that we have this UN conference, water conference schedule started, and we'll have the next one in 2026 and then another one in 2028 and a World Water Forum in 2027 right between.
Okay.
It really does, it falls to all of us to make sure that there's continuity between from one event to the next event to the next event.
Okay.
I think one way I often find myself thinking about this, and this is really my own way of thinking of it, is the World Water Forum really is widely convening. It's much broader.
Okay.
The UN water conferences are much more about high-level political discussions. There's political discussions at the World Water Forum, but the official high-level representative member state level is much stronger in the UN because it's a UN a function of the United Nations, whereas the World Water Forum is much more broad. The objective I think that we have and the challenge we have before us, because this is the first World Water Forum we've had since the
Water conference back
in 23, and then we've got one coming up very quickly. So is to make sure that we've got coordination and collaboration, and we take the opportunity for both of these events to build and strengthen what we're doing. Because when it comes down to it, we don't have time not to.
All right. Now, let me just make it clear so I understand that the UN Water Conference, is it true that then it has a better mechanism and a better way of making sure that any result coming out of the conference will make it into a policy? There's a more structured policy making procedure coming out of the conference. And if that is so, please correct me if I'm wrong, how would the World Water Forum help the decision making and the discussion at the water conference in 2026?
With the water conference, because we do not have a global conference or convention on water. For example, with climate change, we have the Paris Agreement. We have the Montreal Protocols and so forth. With Convention on Biodiversity, we don't have a convention on water because we have so many bilateral transboundary agreements between basins. It really gets very complicated.
It's a big issue here at the forum as well, transboundary issues.
The transboundary issues are really important, and it's because we depend on water for every sector of our society. At UNDP, we recognize that water is not just SDG 6, not just Sustainable Development Goal 6, it's all 17. And we cannot realize the other 16 if we also if we don't take water seriously. We look at that seriously because it spans agriculture, industry, circular economy, gender, poverty, agriculture, everything. Urbanization. You asked about if we have a better mechanism. The challenge we have right now is all of the voluntary commitments that come out of the UN Water Conference, the Water Action Agenda, and these are made both by private sector and public sector and governments, are voluntary. We don't lock them into it. But we can't. We don't have a mechanism within the United Nations at this point to do that. Now, the tricky thing is, what we need to do as a society, and this is where the World Water Forum can help, this is where private sector, this is where youth are really, really critical, can help, is to help the governments and the private sector and the public sector and the NGOs to look at these voluntary commitments as not voluntary, not only voluntary but obligatory, that we've said we're going to do this, this, and this, And therefore, we really need to figure out how to do that. And the other side of it is we need the financial support to be able to do that. We need the resources allocated to be able to realize those commitments. It's easy to make a commitment.
Yeah.
It's hard to actually implement it if you don't have the money.
Yeah.
One of the ways the World Water Forum can help is by serving as a mechanism also to bring together and matchmake potential finance with projects, with programs, with those who are implementing it at the local level, at the state level. Exactly, from the grassroots all the way up. And we need to make sure that the institutions that support that are nested so that what's done at the grassroots level is not contradictory to policies at the national level or the international level. That's part of the great challenge.
There has to be a synergy.
There has to be synergies, exactly. The really cool thing is we're starting to see that happen.
Oh, okay, that's encouraging to hear.
It is. We are starting to see that happen, and I think there's momentum going that way.
So it's like a river. It's a long and winding road, but we have to take it to get to the opportunities that the ocean provides for us.
Exactly. Well, and I often have to remind myself, we cannot push the river.
All right. Yes, that's true.
But we do have to honor the way it flows and take care of the land and the water and greenery and everything. That
go with the flow.
Go with the flow. Just, yes.
So, Dr. Mary, we've learned so much about the UNDP's role here at the 10th World Water Forum, and I would love to talk more about UNDP's projects in Indonesia, but we're going to take a short break first. So please bear with me while we dive deeper into many projects of UNDP. Don't go anywhere. Special Dialogue will be right back.
Okay.
Thank you for staying with us right here on Special Dialogue on TVRI World. I'm Siska Becker. I'm going to continue my conversation now with Dr. Mary Matthews, UNDP Global Water Senior Technical Advisor. Dr. Mary, let's continue our conversation, particularly about the projects of UNDP in Indonesia. Now, maybe you can tell us more first about the challenges that are faced by UNDP in implementing water-related projects in Indonesia. Could you share some of them?
Sure. I think the challenges that we see here are really common to challenges we see all over the world. It's not just Indonesia. The good news is this is the challenging news. These are challenges everywhere, which is helping the governments to really work together, the different sectors to work together to ensure that there's enough water, that water is taken care of, that water is managed fairly, and that the ecosystems upon which we depend for the water are also taken care of. In this region, there are a lot of challenges with water quality. For instance, in the Middle East and North Africa, they have challenges with water quality, but they have a big challenge with water availability. They don't have...
So water scarcity
is a huge challenge there, of course. Here, that's less of a challenge, but the challenge is the quality. And the issue is when the water is polluted, we often cannot use it. You can't use it for agriculture, you can't use it for municipal uses without very expensive and prolonged treatment. So the idea is, instead of having polluted water, which is unfortunately a problem, it's a regulatory problem, it's a budgetary problem, it's a human rights problem. It's an industrial problem because the pollution is actually wasted resources. And so dealing with those challenges is something that UNDP is almost uniquely positioned to work on because we do bring everyone together. We work with our other partners like the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, with FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, and others, but UNDP is the one can really help bring them all together to address those. When you have water quality it's almost like you should have water scarcity because you can't use it and you can't access it.
Basically the same problem then.
And everybody tends to think that, well, it just goes downstream and it'll be fine, and that's not the case. We need to look at what happens to the water when pollution goes into the water. We need to think about where it goes. As we've said for many years, we all live downstream.
All right. Could you share us a little bit more about the causes of water pollution in Indonesia and region? Is it more from the industries, or is it also personal use of chemicals, for instance? Please tell us more.
I think it's everything. There's what's called point source pollution, which is when you know where that water pollution is coming from. It's coming from a source and you can point to it. And then there's non-point source pollution. And that's like agricultural runoff, and that is also important. And the difference here is we need to make sure that as this goes, that or as this water is polluted, that where we can address it at the point source, we can actually take steps to work with those industries, and where it's more diffuse, that we can work with the sectors, like the agricultural sector, to reduce pesticide, herbicides, and excess fertilizer use.
All right. Now, I want to talk about an encouraging update we got right here at the 10th World Water Forum in relation with UNDP's projects in Indonesia that happened at Citarum River in West Java. Could you please tell us more about that?
Sure. UNDP is often called on, and this is from a global perspective again, to come in and help where help is very clearly needed, and we like to be responsive to that. In this case, we've created a self-assessment guide for the industries to be able to look at what they are putting into the river system and into the water and into the groundwater, so they're able to assess that and then take steps to mitigate those negative impacts, and also to have a positive benefit of capturing the water or the chemicals and what is waste, and bring it back and reuse that where they can.
Oh wow, so like a complete, sustainable and accessible freshwater solution for the people alongside the
Well, this is the
River.
first step.
All right.
But the idea would be to work with process engineers. Once you figure out where the problem is, to work with the process engineers, and then be able, after you've worked with the process engineers, to take the steps to mitigate those negative impacts. And of course, this then requires development of regulation. Industries, especially those that are looking to invest, want to have regulations so that they're not in violation of their own environmental and social safeguard standards, but they also want to know that when they are investing, they're not polluting the resources that they depend upon.
Okay, that's very interesting. So is UNDP working together with the local government to ensure the success of this project? And also local communities, I believe, are very much involved in this.
We have to get everybody involved, and we cannot do it if just the industries or just the communities. This is something that takes everybody. It's a joint effort.
Okay, that's great to hear. Could you share us some more success stories of UNDP's project, water-related projects in Indonesia, or maybe even around the region?
Well, you know, I will tell you about one that I came across here at the World Water Forum that really impressed me. There was a young woman who, because water quality is such a serious issue here for drinking water, and for communities that are much more remote, it's even more expensive, and that ends up creating some really difficult imbalances. And then of course women, as the primary caregivers, are often the most impacted. So from a program that was not even intended to be necessarily a water related program, but a women entrepreneur program, this young woman has developed, using research and resources and approaches that have been used elsewhere in the world, a cistern that is very simple, that you can pour water through and it will clean the water, it removes bacteria, it removes viruses, and ends up with potable water once
so like a filtration system for the water.
It's low cost, it's locally made, it's easily replicated, it's easily scaled. This is the sort of thing, and it's a woman entrepreneur who has come up with this and is interested in building this even more. Honestly, I live in Istanbul, Turkey, and I'm trying to figure out if I can get one of these shipped back to Istanbul to put in my kitchen, because I would love to have that. I mean, this is the sort of thing, and again, this is the power of UNDP, where we see something that works, say, in Indonesia and works beautifully. Could this work in Comoros? Could this work in San Tome and Principe? Could this work in Colombia? Could this work in the Samoa Islands? I mean, easily, and we've got this global network where we can quickly adapt and address these things.
All right, I think that's the exciting thing about this forum. You get to share ideas and knowledge, practices, and experiences in water-related issues.
Absolutely, it's incredible. I love these things.
So I want to touch upon one aspect that you mentioned about UNDP's projects in Indonesia, that it needs a lot of collaboration and cooperation with many stakeholders.
Absolutely.
I just want to know, could you tell us more, how much has UNDP mobilized collaborative action to ensure sustainable water solution and sustainable water management?
Across UNDP, we are dedicated to being inclusive and leaving no one behind. And as we look at the impacts of climate change, where 80% of climate change impacts are water related, either too much, too little, water when you're not expecting it, water when you're too much water when you, and again, it's the marginalized communities that are so often the most impacted. UNDP takes a human rights-based approach to water, that everyone has the right to access clean, healthy, safe, secure water. Not just for drinking, but for our animals and our livestock, for the crops we grow and so forth. That's a big challenge. And we can't do it by relying only on the governments, or only on the private sector, or only on NGOs, or only on the youth. It's something that we have to bring everyone together. And again, this is UNDP's effort, and honestly, it's our mission, is to leave no one behind and to make this governance as inclusive and supportive and integrated as we possibly can.
Okay, to have water equality and water justice around the world. Right. Dr. Mary, we cannot have a special guest from UNDP without talking about SDGs. We're going to talk about that after this short break. Please, again, bear with me, Doctor.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back. You're still watching Special Dialogue with me, Siska Becker, and UNDP Global Water Senior Technical Advisor, Dr. Mary Matthews. Dr. Mary, as we said before, now it's time for us to talk about SDGs. Now, of course, we are already familiar with the 17 goals in the SDGs, and as you mentioned before, Goal 6 is water related. But please tell us more how you said actually all 17 goals is related to water issues. So what's the interlink between water and the 17 goals?
Well, I would say SDG 6 is water focused. And all the others are water related, because as much as we would like to think we can eliminate poverty without taking care of water, we can't. Because when a quarter of the population of the planet don't have secure access to water.
A quarter?
A quarter.
That's a big number.
Yeah, 2 billion, it's a lot.
Wow.
Don't have secure access to water, then we can't get rid of poverty. When we have agriculture using 72% of freshwater withdrawals for irrigation, and we have food waste that is 30 to 40%, and that's the food that's grown after we've lost 35% of the water in the transmission to the fields. We cannot address hunger if we don't address the transportation of water to the fields and the transportation of the food to the consumers, and honestly, the consumers not wasting food. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to me. And honestly, if you try to do agriculture without water, last time I checked, that makes dust. It does not work. And so we need to do something a little. And this is you see this across all the SDGs. When we talk about life below water, SDG 14, which focuses mainly on marine, if you have pollution coming down the rivers, it goes into the sea. That's going to have serious impact, and that's why SDG 14 Target 1 is about marine pollution. The pollution doesn't come from the sea, the pollution comes from the land into the sea. There's a fascinating statistic that when it comes to education, young women, as they mature, if they do not have access to water in schools and to sanitation in schools, they often stop going once they reach puberty. 30% of schools don't have water access, which means 30% of women and young girls don't get the education that they need to be able to become active members to help us solve these problems. And with SDG, I think it's SDG 5, on women and gender equality. In regions where women have to carry water, where there's not water at the household level, women carry 80% of the water. If we could solve for that, we could actually empower 640 million women to become active, engaged citizens because they have time to do that because they're not carrying water. Water goes across all these, whether it's industry. For example, the project that we discussed just now that we've done on with the industry, the European Union has helped us to do that, in part because they recognize how important it is within the industrial cycle to capture that from the EU Water Framework Directive, which they've implemented there, and with their support, we're able to start moving in that same direction. Water crosses absolutely everything: life on land, life below water, climate change, circular economy, equity, justice. It's all there. And of course, peace and security, because we're seeing mass migration around the world because of lack of access to water. If we can figure this part out, we can change the way that we function as a planet, and the planet really needs us to do that.
Hearing that, so it makes it absolutely crucial to have a sustainable water management solution to be able to achieve the goals, all the goals in the SDGs.
Exactly.
Now, if you don't mind me asking, I know you must be asked this a lot of times, but like in 2024, if you're asked, what is the biggest challenges for probably Indonesia and also the region or even globally to realize the goals of the SDGs by 2030? Is it still possible to get a global consensus, the political will of all countries to actually realize the goals of the SDGs?
I think the political will is both the challenge and the solution. It's sort of challenge and opportunity, or the same sides of the same coin. We are seeing urgency now that we didn't see 5 and 10 and 20 years ago. And people are becoming aware of that, and governments are becoming aware of that. What we have to do is figure out how to build those institutional structures so that we can actually meet those SDGs. For example, sometimes I get questions like, well, can't the UN solve this? And I'm like, no. The United Nations is the body that unites governments and unites nations. We do not have an unlimited fund to support everything we would like to be. We would like to, but we can't. We don't have those funds. We rely on the member states of the United Nations to help work together. As I said earlier, we don't even have a convention. There's the biodiversity convention, there's the climate convention, there's the desertification convention. These are all very important conventions out of Rio de Janeiro on sustainable development, we don't have one for water. So what we have to do is we have to get water into all of those, because if we don't get water into those, we're not going to be able to make those SDGs. We're not going to be able to realize those. But the will to do that is both, as I said, the challenge, but also the potential. And Indonesia and the steps that Indonesia is taking to address the water quality issues. And it can be small, but once it starts, it can get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think this is what we're seeing everywhere. And my hope is, inshallah, that we will see this happen everywhere in the world.
Dr. Mary, we share your hopes and wishes for sure. But I now want to touch upon a message that was delivered by Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, at the opening ceremony, when he likened the water crisis happening right now to climate change. He was quite blunt with his words, saying that it was too late now to deal with climate change because we are already paying for it, for our lack of action, and now climate change effects are ruining many lives around the world. Now, where are we at this point with the water crisis? Do we still have breathing room? Is it too late, or is it the point of no return? Please enlighten us.
I have a granddaughter who will turn 3 months old the 1st of May. I cannot say it's too late. I owe it to her, and I can't let anyone say it's too late, because we have to do it. The planet will survive. The question is, will people be able to survive on the planet?
That's right.
And I think we really need to look at this as something we can no longer afford to kind of wish away. There's some work that I've been engaged with the College of Actuarials, the insurance, who look at de-risking and so forth, and they've said, oh, our projections are all wrong. The projections they show that have been used by industries and by investment show that if we have a 5-degree change in global climate, that there's going to be a 20% change in global GDP. That's originally. They've now gone back. These are the people who assess risk for buildings, for cars, for industries, for investments. They've now said 2.3 degrees will be catastrophic.
Yeah.
Now, you asked about climate change, and you asked about, is it too late? And I don't want to say it's too late, but one of the challenges with climate change, and I'm an American and I've seen it happen, is people, oh, it's not real, it's not happening. And I like to say to them, just because you do not believe in it does not mean you are immune to the impacts of this.
Yeah.
And because we framed it as the carbon emissions, which is absolutely scientifically proven and correct.
Technically, that is what is going on.
It's exactly it. But it's because of that and our reliance on fossil fuels, we've almost been diverted in a way. And there's great work that UNDP is doing on net zero work. But if we had framed it originally as not we're going to have higher temperatures, we're going to have extreme weather, we're going to have floods, we're going to have droughts, we're going to have ocean acidification and the death of all the shelled creatures in the oceans. I mean, if we had not framed it that way, and not that those aren't correct, if we had framed it as we are going to experience water crises like we have never seen in anyone's life, and anyone's life who's been alive for the last 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 years, I think we would have gotten more action. The trick we have now, when we're looking at the actuarial tables and we're seeing what's happening, the risk is related to water. We've got to take those steps to mitigate that. We have to do that through nature and nature-based solutions as much as possible, because Mother Nature is the best engineer out there. With all respect to all of my engineers who I love dearly, Mother Nature's like way above. We need to learn, and we need to do that very quickly, and we're in the process of doing that now. I think there's hope, and I think there has to be, because my granddaughter is going to be really mad at me if I don't get this right, and if we don't get this right.
Gramps doesn't want to upset the grandbaby. Dr. Mary, I feel like I can speak with you for many hours to come, but unfortunately, due to time constraint, we need to wrap up our conversation. So as your closing statement, just quickly, maybe you can tell us about current projects going on with UNDP in Indonesia, and maybe like a little bit teaser of what's going on in the future between UNDP and Indonesia in water related issues.
Absolutely. You know, when it comes to it, what I've been saying is we've got to integrate and we've got to bring everybody together. We have a great project here in Indonesia that we're in the process of launching and getting moving on what we call the water, energy, food nexus. And I would say it's the water, energy, food, environment nexus, because you have to take care of the environment, which is why you have water and food and to a degree even energy. And so it's building on bringing those sectors together, looking at how things can work together, how to make sure everybody has their needs met, but that no one is left behind. And that's one of the most important things that we have. And I think moving forward within Indonesia, we will continue to work on this integrating effect, bringing this effort, bringing everyone together, getting everyone to the table, getting the people who are at the table to bring others to the table as well, and making sure we bring in the private sector and the finance sector and the government
all
sector.
Stakeholders.
And all the stakeholders and the NGOs. And I think honestly, one of the benefits very quickly about UNDP, as I said, is we can take the lessons here and we can transplant them. Water flows downhill everywhere in the world. The way people deal with it differs, so we can't automatically take something that works, say in Egypt, and make it work in Indonesia. We can retrofit it, we can adapt it, but humans are the most adaptive and adaptable species that's ever lived on this planet, and that's what we need to rely on.
All right, Dr. Mary, thank you so much for our enlightening conversation. It's been eye-opening to say the least. Thank you so much for your time. Please enjoy the rest of your time right here in Bali and in the 10th World Water Forum. Thank you, Dr. Mary.
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed it, and it's been wonderful being here with you and with your audience. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you. So that's the end of my conversation with my very special guest, Dr. Mary Matthews. If I can sum up our conversation in simple words, I think we can say that water doesn't need us, but we need water. So be wise with water. I'm Siska Becker. See you next time on TVRI World.